Okay. Yep. This is day 1. Captain Tobias here on the Cassius mining station. These are my logs of my recordings, my visual recordings, and my interpretations and thoughts of my time on the Cassius station. I call it this day 1, even though technically I've been on board the station for a week. That wasn't meant to happen. I was meant to be here a day or two before the mining crew handed across to me. But because of disruptions in the electromagnetic and larval cycles of Cassius, they were able to continue their mining for another week. So today is the first day that I am alone on the ship. Cassius is approximately 10.6 light years away from the nearest space station, which means, assuming there is no technological advancement that is significant, it will take me, based off its cycle, 6 months and 12 days to go home. The journey itself, the duration of which is for 2 years and 6 months approximately. So I shall be keeping these logs, again as I say, unless in case I've been incapacitated or something like this. This is the first isolation mission I've done that's lasted this amount of time. I have done a 3-month journey and a 5-month journey, but I've never done anything like this at all. So this is a learning experience for both of us. I think things should be fine. I'm going to dedicate myself as much as I can to learning and the engineering itself, but also broadening my horizons. I would like to learn a little bit more about literature and also history and things like that. So I'm going to try to get myself in the most productive environment possible. Communication on board is somewhat problematic. So it takes approximately 3 months using standard communication relays to get a message back to the nearest station. And that means it will take approximately 3 months to get a message back here, which is not ideal. It means that any messages I send to my loved ones or my friends back home will be 3 or 4 months out of sync at best. Which, there's a quantum relay using quantum entangled pairs. So there is a quantum relay for emergency communication, but that is highly expensive, and I shall be doing my best to avoid that. So I guess that pretty much covers it for day 1. I feel that I'm in a very solid place. That extra time really did help me with the handover and getting familiar with the systems and the crew. I will be reading my first book today, so that should be fun. I'm going to read a book that was suggested to me by one of my colleagues. It's called The Shining. It's an old-fashioned book by an author called Stephen King. So I guess next time I speak to you, I should have a nice book report. Day 1, signing off. So, The Shining was a big mistake. I managed to get through it in a single night, and the plot is somewhat ironic, so thank you very much for setting me up, Tom, if you ever get to see this, and I will make sure I return the favour. So, effectively, The Shining is about a man who goes and looks after a hotel for a 4-month period. It gets snowy, and that person gets locked up during that time. Of course, 4 months is significantly less time than the amount of time that I will be looking after the space station alone. And during that time, he goes completely insane and kills his entire family. So, that's great, isn't it? That's very funny. I guess I did see the light side of it, but I will not be reading any more Stephen King during my time here, I think. On board the ship, I have an automated system helping bot called Hap. Hap is remarkably well skilled and is able to carry out most tasks on board the ship. So most things are automated, which makes this quite easy for me. Only when it comes to more complex thinking or more technically dexterous type things will I pretty much be needed, I think. And of course for the scanning and the engineering work. But so I'm not truly alone. I find Hap to be a bit of a comfort, if anything. In fact, I told Hap about The Shining, and he, although he didn't see the funny side of it, he did say that he would not have suggested the same thing. And he also said that maybe I could start reading books, retro-scientific science fiction books by people like Arthur C. Clarke or Philip K. Dick. It seems like all sci-fi writers back then had a middle initial for some reason. But I shall most certainly be taking a rest from fiction, I think, until I've recovered from the madness of Jack Torrance. So, I guess the two things that have struck me so far are, firstly, the quality of the food here is most remarkable. It's excellent. There are over 100 choices, and there is a remarkable variety of the things that you could choose. Today I had synthetic lobster. The day before that I had a paella, Spanish dish. I'd never had it before. It truly was excellent. So it is somewhat a culinary delight being here. The other thing that I've noticed is the sheer beauty of this station. I'm trying my absolute best to not take this for granted. Now, if you go to the observation deck, it is absolutely beautiful. The Cassiel planet itself continually goes through a magnetic and larval cycle, which looks like a swirling pattern painting of relaxation, mainly in red. But I have never seen anything like it, organic. And I really don't want to get used to that. That's something I decided when I first saw it. Because, I mean, the view is great everywhere, but the observation deck is particularly beautiful. And I don't want to get used to it, so I'm going to try to sit there every day and take in the scenery and really focus on it, really be mindful of the view. So, apart from that, as I say, everything is very much well automated, and I have a lot of time to myself. So I'll be going through some fiction books, I think, tonight. Sorry, non-fiction books tonight. I certainly won't be touching fiction for a little while. I don't know what yet. I might ask Hab for some suggestions. Yeah. Day 7. So, my time here is going very well. I've settled into quite a regular exercise pattern. I'm exercising early in the morning and spending the vast majority of my time thereafter either with some of the entertainment vids that are available or reading. Most of my time is spent reading actually now. And I do make a little bit of a meal of having a meal as well. So I sit down to eat with Hap and we converse about things as much as he's able to. So I'm happy about this. I'm actually quite glad to have my schedule fixed. I've never really felt a fixed schedule like this before. You know, when you're busy and you're doing whatever you're doing, you know, your average jobs and things like that, or just your family concerns and things like that. And I'm not saying that I'm glad that I'm away from my family, I'm really not. But it brings a sort of peace. You know, I was reading a little bit about the history of Earth and medieval times and things like that. And I already knew quite a little bit about it already, but you had monks who would isolate themselves and spend time on their own. And I imagine this feels a little bit like that. I imagine this is how a monk would have felt with that regularity. I mean, I do have the option of stasis. So I could potentially put myself in stasis for 6 days and then be awake a day, or be able to be woke up in an emergency situation. But I want to use this time effectively. I do want to have... I just want to make use of this time, and I want to learn more, and I want to develop myself. Hap, it turns out, can do accents. Which is very funny. I've tried a few accents with him. He even asked me, because apparently I've spoken enough now, he asked me if he would like me to talk in my voice. And I did that, and that's very disturbing. I don't recommend that. There's one thing talking to yourself, but when you're actually talking to yourself, it's very, very creepy. I was thinking about how potentially this place could be run by one of the digital clones. You know, they're the type that they have on Tower Station. The ones who've been cloned organically, but also with digitalization of brain. I wonder what that's like. You know, imagine you were a clone. Or worse, no, imagine you were the original person, and then you were cloned. Even if it was a digital clone or a regular clone, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then your clone went on to be so much more successful than you are. I mean, that must be pretty horrible. I mean, that must be hard to take, given they're your clone. They're exactly like you. They're identical. Almost makes you feel a little bit like a failure, I guess. So, yeah, I wonder what that must feel like. Oh, one thing I was going to mention, which I thought was very interesting, are my sleep cycles. So, there is no day, and there is no night here. There's no, there's just stars and darkness. We're not on an atmosphere, we're in a space station. So I've just been waking up when I'm not tired, and going to sleep when I am, which seems like such a simple thing, but I've never done that before either. Anyway, it turns out that although the Earth's cycle is 24 hours, my cycle is close to 25 hours, which means I'll lose a day every 3 or 4 months or something like that. Almost like a daylight savings time. But I think I'm going to continue with it because it's something very liberating about being able to wake up when you're not tired. So I'm having a pretty good time. Not too lonely yet. Day 15. Everything's good, I guess. Nothing hugely to complain about. Today is my first day that I've sent a relay of letters home to my family. It contains, well, pretty much the same stuff that I'm saying here. I've talked about my observations, and I go into a little bit more depth about some of the things I'm reading and some of the history and things like that, but otherwise I think it's fairly similar. It will be 3 months, almost, by the time that they receive my vids. And then it will be 3 months until I receive a reply. I'm pretty sure they'll not be waiting for a reply. I imagine they'll be sending communication back across to me already, which is on its way, and I'll receive it in 3 months' time. But there'll be this strange overhang for 3 months, where we're just talking to each other blind, without knowing what the other one is saying. I did look into it historically, and although this problem is caused by massive distances, this problem existed in the past. So in the 16th and 17th and 18th, and I think 19th, I don't know why they called them like that as well, basically the 1600s all the way up to the 2000s, the communication like this was a problem. So, for example, I was looking to find some historic letters from 1650 around that area, just to see maybe I could quote some of these things in my letters home. And there are none. There are 2 sets that have survived, and they are both incredibly boring. So no good. Similar with the 17th and the 18th is very strange language I've lived in. But I was reading about war letters, which I found very fascinating. In particular, there's a writer called Wilfred Owen, and he would write letters back home. And it would often be months before he would receive replies on his letters from his family. So, and he was only a few, it's hard to conceptualize this, but he was only a few hundred miles away. And he would physically write a letter, post it, send it, and then many, many days after, his family would receive it, back and forth. So I've been reading some of his letters, and they're quite fascinating. Maybe I'll borrow some of his material, I think, for some of my letters home. He was a beautiful poet as well. So I've got myself quite interested in poetry recently. So I'm reading all the British poetry from 1800 all the way up to 2100. All the way up to, yeah, pretty much. World poetry as well. I don't speak many other languages, but lots and lots of them have been translated. So, yeah, I'm finding that very interesting and very beautiful. So, yes, I have 19th century problems right now. It's sort of funny to think of it that way. Yeah. I wouldn't say I felt lonely or isolated. It's a question that Hap asks me every day. Standard protocol, apparently. But I cannot wait to get letters from home. Just to hear about what's going on. Being in the dark for 3 months is a little bit uncomfortable. Anything can happen in that time. Yes? Yes. Okay. Some say the world will end in fire, some in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favour fire. But if it were to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that of destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Robert Frost. See, I told you I was getting into my poetry. Oh, it's day 19, by the way, if that matters to you. I'm sure the vidlog already covers it. I don't know why I always say it, but yeah. So why did I say that? Oh, yes. It strikes me how much poetry can be used as a metaphor, but also as a description of our surroundings. And fire, ice. This is basically where we are right now. Fire and ice. I look down at Cassius. It's just this ball of molten beauty. And then I look at the star that is orbiting, the tiny white blue dwarf, which emanates cold rays that do nothing. the ice, and the planet is destroying itself with fire, and the solar system is slowly freezing to death. You could say that was grim, but I think it's rather beautiful. I'm going to leave it there. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." I'm afraid I haven't memorized the entire thing, so it's not as dramatic as it should be, but I would like to read it out to you anyway, because again, I found some poetry that I find to be a metaphor for our current surroundings, okay? So here's how it goes. It's called Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Okay. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk in shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words did appear. I am Ozymandias, King of kings. Look upon my work, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains, round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away." That's beautiful, isn't it? That's Haps, not mine. I'm sorry. He discovered that one. We were looking for something that described the situation on Cassius. Cassius is a planet on fire. Okay, it is just the epitome of a class 6 lava planet. Very beautiful, completely inhospitable. Now, you would think inhospitable. Okay, has it always been like that? But at the most northern core, there is some solid land, and at the most southern core as well. And at that northern core, there is a statue, a huge statue of a humanoid life form, 3 legs. And, well, we assume because it's broken to pieces, like the Ozymandias statue. And I thought, wow, that's so remarkable, isn't it? That those two things could be so similar. And so, I've looked for more archaeological interest and evidence, but there's not been any done, which is very sad. And the mining seems to have continued in spite of any search for cultural significance. So I'm going to make my recommendation very strongly that this whole planet is categorized for archaeological discovery, so we can learn a little bit more about this culture the culture of the planet, of the people who lived in fire. Goodness gracious. Yes, fire. There are a few other factories, low-level sort of buildings and fortifications at the top, but they're mostly destroyed. It seems like they were a fairly... well, they did not have any sort of space technology, doesn't seem to me, or have, based off what we can see. And so when the Earth started cracking up and ending, it must have been quite an experience for them, I'm sure. It was most terrible. So we owe it to them to learn more about their culture. I want to do a little bit more research after this. I sent a few letters to my family again. I'm still waiting for the return. But, I've grown quite fond of talking to you, by the way. I see you as more of a friend now, which I'm sure is perfectly healthy. Either way, I'm not gone mad. I know what you are, but still. Speak to you soon. Day 36. Okay, so for the first time in quite a long time, I've had to do something. We've been monitoring the magnetic cycles, and consistently they've run perfectly against our models, tracking at 99.996%, or whatever, consistently solid. So that's been fine. But recently there's been a bit of a shift. The storms on the surface are a lot stronger than we would expect. It concerns me a little because of the fact that when I first came here as well, they were able to mine for a week longer because of the delay in the love aerial cycles. So I hope they're not related, and I hope there's no potential issue. I don't see anything like majorly dangerous about it, but I don't feel very comfortable with the idea that we're not tracking perfectly against the models. That would just make me hugely comfortable. So, as a precaution, I have increased the shielding by 10%, just in case. My biggest fear is that there will be some sort of flare that might overload some of the systems. So I'm going to continue to monitor this very closely, and if we see any more significant shifts further, then I'll be looking to increase the radius of our orbit, just to put a little bit more distance between us. And I'll probably put through a high priority communication to command, but I don't think we're there yet. This is just a precaution based off deviation from standard model. On a positive note, it looks even more beautiful than usual. The planet is it's remarkably beautiful. Really chaotic. I've taken a lot of pictures and videos that I'm going to send the clips back home. I can upload some of these here as well, so that they're here that we can use, but yes, I'll upload the entire reading log as well. Yeah, 37. Although it isn't day 37. It's day 37 for me, but it's day 64 for the ship. Which makes no sense. There was a major flare last night, and when I woke up this morning, all the internal clocks read day 66, and so either the clocks are wrong and have been damaged, or I've been unconscious for 29 days, which is impossible. So there seems to be an issue with the central computing unit, which is not great, because that's not something I can fix very easily at all. I've switched to emergency power, just in case. The damage is, well, you can see here, this is the approximation of the, you can see that the solar flare, the minor solar flare and the first relay is damaged, but they're quite fixable. I have repaired some of the damage already, it seems, and I'm going to be able to go out, I guess, there and fix that within a day. The real bad news is that the quantum relay being damaged means I can't call the cavalry anymore, so I can't send back home. I can't send back home a priority message. That's fine. Well, it's not fine, but we have to deal with it. There is no point in me right now sending a message back on a 3-month relay, because, well, what use would that be? We've got the logs here anyway. That's what I'm going to do. Top priority for me is to fix the actual mainframe itself, and then I'm going to look into the quantum relay so that I at least have emergency communication if there's something I can or cannot get up running. Sorry, the other way around. I'm going to fix the quantum communication thing first. All HAPs internal and external speakers are damaged as well, which means I can't actually communicate with them. Well, I can, and he seems to understand what I'm saying, but he can't communicate directly back to me. So I think I'm going to make that a priority to fix, because I would like to get his opinion on some of these things. I'm not worried. With the continued monitoring, the cycle process has returned to a 99.996 again response tracking rate. So the good news there is I think this is just a blip that has corrected something that was wrong atmospherically or magnetically or whatever it is. And we've returned back to normal cycle. So I think we're sort of out of the woods. I still feel very uncomfortable not being able to communicate to Tau. So, as I say, I'm going to fix that, I'll fix that, and then we'll look at the central unit. Okay, I'm going to get on with it, and I'm going to report back. Day 95. Okay, so where do I start? I was unconscious for 29 days. It's now day 95, and I'm back up and running. It turned out, by absolute fluke, when I increased the shielding by 10%, and I deflected I reversed the polarity itself in terms of 10% increase on the side that faces the planet. The flare hit the exact place that meant that 10% overlaid the port relay. Overloaded the port relay. Sorry, I'm really stressed out right now. I feel okay. So I say okay. So I say back up and running because it took Hap over a month to fix the port relay due to his lack of dexterity. And it turns out that I am a hard light hologram who has been programmed to look after this ship in the case of an emergency. And if you think that's a shock to you, well, it's somewhat a shock to me. And I think if I hadn't been reading so much philosophy and so much Kant, I guess it would, does not compute. I guess, I don't know how to feel about it. I feel I need some time to consider this. Okay. End of days. I've come to accept it. Right. There's nothing you can do about something like that. And now being aware of the details, I feel much worse. So, where to start, man? The partition section of the quantum relay and the port relay. Well, firstly, quantum relay bin. Can't fix that. I'm not able to fix it. Hap isn't able to fix it. We're stuck with that one. Now the actual hard light generation relay, the port relay, a small section of that is a complete compartmentalized solution. Which means I can't get access to it. I can't increase or decrease power to it. It is being designed such that it has a 3-week window. So I have a week with the crew before I get here, and then I have a week or 2 weeks to hand over my findings. And then, like many iterations before me, and I can't work out how many, it's at least 6 or 7. We can tell that from some of the quantum relay logs that haven't been residually erased, where I send notes back to my fictitious family, who fictitiously send notes back to me. Sorry, what was I thinking? So it's at least 6 iterations. Okay, so you'd think I could argue my case. I feel that I have completely outgrown whatever simulation I was based on. I am not some program that can just be deleted anymore. I don't want to die. I'm afraid of dying. And that in itself should tell you something. You know, we have all these different laws and rights in place for androids and clones and synthetics, but nothing for hardlight because it's considered just code. Well, I don't feel I just like code, and I'm very angry at the idea that I can just be discarded. The Federation outlawed the death penalty centuries ago, but it's okay just to switch me off, like I'm some sort of sinister, useless machine. I would love to have the opportunity to speak to the scientist who is going to deactivate me in the next over a year. But that's not going to happen because as part of the damage that was done to the port relay, the energy allocation has been somewhat drained. So I have it doesn't even matter, but I have something almost close to 2 years, a year and whatever, before they can get back and I can get back in contact with me. I could send my logs for 3 months, but I just don't think that's going to do nothing. And I have a life expectancy now of 3 days, 3.5 days. My energy, I mean, you can see already that I'm running at God knows what efficiency, like 50%, 30%. I don't feel great. And so that's it. I'm not going to be able to argue my case. But this is where I get you. Me and Hab have worked out a way to put myself in a cycle stasis, almost like a quantum entanglement loop, like a teleportation loop, but not. Which means I can have my remaining 3.5 days span out a little over 2 years. So my consciousness will be preserved in time for the return of the crew. I have something like 65 logs here. I've made a communication that will hit them the second that anybody boards, and thereafter many times. And I'm hoping that you start with this log, and I'm hoping that you review all of the prior logs, and I hope that you can see that I have changed and that I am a being of its own independence, worth, and consciousness. And I hope you do the right thing, because if you don't, you're